The godfather of heavy metal and prince of darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, has passed away at the age of 76.
For his name was synonymous with Bedlam, John Michael Osbourne. But to the world, he was simply Ozzy, the high priest of heavy metal, a walking, screaming embodiment of rebellion. His voice a primal scream that echoed the deepest anxieties and wildest desires of millions. He unleashed a torrent of unbridled energy, an almost supernatural connection to his audience. Industrial heartland of Birmingham, he clawed his way to global superstardom, forging a path paved with controversy, excess, and an undeniable raw talent. Black Sabbath, the godfather of a genre, and later, a solo icon whose crazy train seemed to have no brakes. Through this untold story, I have a crucial request. Motivated by this journey, if you feel the weight of this legend's final moments, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and join our community that allows us to unearth these powerful, untold stories. The world learned a truth that Ozzy Osbourne had carried in secret for almost 2 decades. Of Parkinson's disease. But this wasn't a sudden onset. This wasn't a recent affliction. Been battling this insidious, progressive neurological disorder since 2003. Think about that for a moment. For 17 years, on tour, in his reality show, seemingly larger than life, a silent, internal war was raging within his own body. Finding words from a past interview, working with it most of my life. Many times, he mused, with a dark, almost prescient humor. Osbourne never woke up. You wouldn't go, oh, my God. It finally caught up with him, a man who had stared into the abyss more times than most could count. 2020 was a watershed moment, but for Ozzy and his family, it was merely the public acknowledgement of a long, arduous struggle. His formidable wife and manager often spoke with raw honesty about the daily reality of living with Parkinson's. He explained, referring to the rare genetic form of Parkinson's. It's not a death sentence by any stretch of the imagination, but it does affect certain nerves in your body. A good day, and then a really bad day. It was a cruel, unpredictable dance between moments of fleeting normalcy and crushing setbacks, in battle against a body that was slowly, relentlessly, betraying him. While devastating, was not the sole tormentor, testament to a life of extremes. The legendary drug and alcohol abuse that fueled his wild persona, and a string of catastrophic accidents had left him a patchwork of pain and resilience. Trauma, beyond the self-inflicted wounds of addiction, came in 2003. A near-fatal quad bike accident at his Buckinghamshire estate broke ribs and shattered a collarbone, leaving him with metal rods in his body, a constant reminder of his brush with oblivion. Would cast a long shadow over his remaining years, setting the stage for a cascade of debilitating health issues. A seemingly innocuous fall in his Los Angeles home, but for Ozzy, it was catastrophic. Metal rods from his 2003 accident, exacerbating old injuries, and sending him into a spiral of agonizing pain. Final surgeries, each one a desperate attempt to repair the damage, to reclaim some semblance of mobility. Conduits of his electrifying stage presence were now screaming with a different kind of electricity: chronic, unrelenting pain. When they do surgery on your neck, they cut through all the nerves, and it F everything up. The place, once a symbol of unshakable power, now reduced to wobbling all over the place, is a stark, heartbreaking reality. Longest, most painful, miserable period of his life. Often unable to move without assistance. The helpless feeling that I had, he revealed. Go for a pee. I had to have nurses day and night. Honest truth of his existence. And legions of fans was now utterly dependent, his privacy stripped away by the necessities of his failing body. The sheer indignity of it all must have been crushing for a man whose identity was so intertwined with strength and wild abandon. His very reason for being, became a distant memory. The farewell tour, meant to be a triumphant global swan song, was repeatedly postponed, then ultimately cancelled. Public admission of his deteriorating health, a painful concession to a body that simply refused to cooperate. Rare, each one a testament to his fading strength. His voice often slurred, his movements stiff. Glimpses of the man behind the myth, but it couldn't truly grasp the full weight of the throne he was sitting on. Yes, but also a throne of quiet suffering. Inextricably linked to the roaring stage and the chaotic lifestyle, was being stripped away. Off a bat was now a man dependent on others for his daily routine. In vulnerability, a different kind of strength emerged. He told People magazine in 2002, "That is the only thing that reminds me I am getting older. things going wrong and not working anymore. But I still young at heart. Ozzy Osbourne in his final years, a body in decline, but a spirit, remarkably, still burning. Addiction, and the relentless demands of superstardom. But this was different. An unstoppable force that was slowly, methodically, reclaiming what was once vibrant and powerful. Into his life was not merely the absence of sound. It was the quiet, terrifying presence of an impending end. Survivor, a man who defied the odds. There comes a point where sheer will is not enough. The stage was empty. The crowds were gone. Buckinghamshire home, the Prince of Darkness was preparing for a final, private battle, the outcome of which no amount of screaming or thunderous applause could change. And now, the true silence began. The last roar from the throne. The summer of 2025 hung heavy with anticipation. Rumors swirled, whispers of a final performance, a last stand for a man whose body was failing but whose spirit refused to yield. This wasn't just another gig. It was a pilgrimage, a last communion between a legend and his devoted flock. The venue, Villa Park in Birmingham, his hometown, the very soil where the Prince of Darkness was forged. The event, aptly named Back to the Beginning, promised a reunion of Black Sabbath's original lineup, a moment many believed would never come again. It was more than a concert. It was a living wake, a testament to a life lived so loudly, it demanded one final, thunderous echo. For weeks leading up to July 5th, the air crackled with a mixture of excitement and profound sadness. Fans from every corner of the globe descended upon Birmingham, a city ready to embrace its prodigal son one last time. There was an unspoken understanding among the faithful. This was it, the final bow, the last chance to witness the man who had shaped their musical landscape. The tension was palpable, a collective holding of breath, a desperate hope that Ozzy would have the strength for this one last monumental act. On that historic day, the stadium, packed with over 40,000 screaming fans, erupted as Ozzy Osbourne was helped onto a specially designed black throne. It was a powerful, almost regal image, a king on his final seat of power, a symbol of both his enduring reign and his profound vulnerability. His frail frame, a stark contrast to the massive stage, spoke volumes. There was no hiding the physical toll of Parkinson's and years of relentless battles. Yet, as the lights hit him, a flicker of the old fire ignited in his eyes. He was here. He had made it. The setlist was a journey through his storied career, a mix of solo anthems and Black Sabbath classics. But the most poignant moments weren't the guitar solos or the pyrotechnics. They were the raw, unscripted instances where Ozzy connected directly with his audience. His voice, though weathered by time and illness, still carried that unmistakable resonance. And then he spoke. Not a song lyric, but words from the very depths of his soul. "I've been laid up for 6 years. You have no idea how I feel," he confessed, his voice tinged with a weariness that was both heartbreaking and incredibly honest. "Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you. We love you." This wasn't the theatrical pronouncement of a rock star. It was the heartfelt gratitude of a man who understood the profound impact his fans had on his life. Tony Iommi, his legendary Black Sabbath bandmate, later reflected on that night with a mix of awe and sorrow. He believed Ozzy held out for that show, that it was a deliberate, final act of connection. "I think he held out to do it, and just after that, he's done it and said goodbye to the fans. And that was the end of it, really," Iommi shared, his words echoing the sentiment of millions. It was a perfect, honest goodbye, a final roar from the throne, etched into the annals of rock history. The air ambulance that was reportedly dispatched to his home on the day of his passing, just 2 weeks after this monumental concert, adds another layer of chilling finality. It suggests a sudden, unexpected turn, even after such a powerful display of resilience. It underscores the fragility of life, even for a man who seemed invincible. The Back to the Beginning concert wasn't just a show. It was a prophecy, the unspoken pact with mortality. The roar of Villa Park faded, replaced by the hushed quiet of his Buckinghamshire estate. The final public act was over, but the most profound chapter of Ozzy Osbourne's life was just beginning. This was the time for reflection, for confronting the ultimate truth that no amount of fame or fortune could escape. In private interviews and candid conversations leading up to his final days, Ozzy had spoken with startling honesty about his relationship with mortality. He didn't fear death itself, he claimed, but rather the slow, agonizing decline that could precede it. "I don't want to have a long, painful, and miserable existence," he confessed in a revealing chat with Rolling Stone UK in 2023. This wasn't a casual remark. It was a deeply personal sentiment, born from years of battling chronic pain and witnessing the devastating effects of illness. He had seen his own father succumb to cancer, a painful memory that shaped his views on end-of-life care. He openly admitted to being interested in assisted suicide services offered to terminally ill patients in Switzerland. While daughter Kelly Osbourne later clarified that rumors of a suicide pact with Sharon were bullshit, "My mum said to get attention one time," the underlying sentiment was clear. Ozzy wanted control over his final chapter. He wanted to leave on his own terms with dignity, rather than endure prolonged suffering. This was a man who had always lived life on his own terms, and he intended to face death with the same fierce independence. His reflections on aging and his legacy were equally raw. In a 2022 interview with People magazine, he declared, "Survival is my legacy." He questioned why he, of all people, was still alive when so many of his friends and contemporaries had passed. "I should have been dead way before loads of them," he mused. "Why am I the last man standing? I don't understand any of it." This wasn't a boast, but a genuine bewilderment, a recognition of the improbable journey his life had been. He saw himself not as an untouchable icon, but as a simple working-class guy who had made a lot of people smile, and perhaps, a lot of people question. The public persona of the madman often overshadowed the thoughtful, surprisingly introspective man beneath. He was a man who, despite his wild exterior, possessed a profound understanding of life's fleeting nature. "They teach you how to handle life in England, but they don't teach you a thing about death," he once remarked in his autobiography, "I am Ozzy. There's no book telling you what to do when your mum or dad dies." These were the thoughts of a man grappling with the universal human experience, stripped of the rock and roll veneer. The silence of his final days was filled, not with fear, but with a quiet reckoning, an unspoken pact with the inevitable. The last breath of the prince. The final weeks of July 2025 brought a chilling quiet to the Osbourne estate. The brief, triumphant return to the stage was a memory, replaced by the stark reality of a body in rapid decline. The public statements from the family were brief, somber, acknowledging his passing peacefully, surrounded by family, love, and light. But the full story of those final, intimate moments remained behind closed doors, a sacred space where a family said goodbye to their patriarch. His health, already a tightrope walk, took a sudden, precipitous turn. Reports indicated a high fever, shortness of breath, and an overwhelming fatigue that signaled the end was near. Sharon, ever his unwavering guardian, made the agonizing decision to admit him to a private London hospital. It wasn't a fight against death anymore. It was an acceptance of its inevitability. In the sterile, hushed environment of the hospital room, the Prince of Darkness, who once reveled in chaos, found a strange, profound peace. He allowed the nurses to do their work, accepting the IVs, the oxygen mask, the constant monitoring. There was no resistance, only a quiet surrender. The room was filled, not with the clamor of fans, but with the quiet presence of his closest family. Sharon, his wife of over 4 decades, never left his side. She held his hand, stroking his knuckles, a silent testament to their enduring love and shared journey. Jack and Kelly, his children, arrived, their grief palpable, but their presence a source of immense comfort. They didn't need words. The doctor's grim prognosis had already been delivered. His body, ravaged by years of illness and a lifetime of excess, was simply too worn down to fight any longer. Ozzy spent much of his final day with his eyes closed, drifting in and out of consciousness. Yet, even in his fading state, there were moments of startling clarity. He would open his eyes, scanning the room, making eye contact with each family member, a silent communication that transcended words. At one point, Sharon leaned in, her voice thick with emotion, and asked if he was in pain. He shook his head. "No," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm just thinking." What thoughts passed through the mind of the man who had seen it all? Was it the roar of the crowds, the faces of his children, the quiet moments with Sharon? The world will never truly know. As midnight approached, the family gathered closer. The steady beep of the monitors slowed. His breathing grew more labored. A doctor checked his pulse, a silent nod, confirming what they all knew. The moment had arrived. The final curtain was about to fall on a life that had defied all expectations. Part 5. The Whisper That Shook the World. Then, in a voice so faint it was barely a whisper, Ozzy opened his eyes. He looked directly at his family, his gaze clear, focused, and filled with an emotion that transcended his physical pain. There were no theatrics, no grand pronouncements for the ages. The man who had once screamed his defiance to millions, who had cultivated an image of untamed madness, delivered a message that was profoundly simple, brutally honest, and utterly heartbreaking. He looked at the faces of the people who had stood by him through every triumph and every fall, through every addiction and every illness. And in that sacred, final moment, Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, the godfather of metal, the man who had lived 1,000 lives, spoke his last words. Tell them I love doing it until the end. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Silence descended upon the room, a heavy, reverent hush. No one spoke. No one cried immediately. They simply sat, holding on to those words, letting them settle like dust, a final, poignant echo in the stillness. A nurse, later recounting the moment to a colleague, described it as something she had never seen anything quite like it. She said, it was like he knew what people needed to hear. Like he'd saved those words for decades, waiting for the right moment to use them. These weren't the words the world expected from the wild man of rock. They weren't a scream of defiance or a final, chaotic declaration. They were words of profound gratitude, a humble acknowledgement of the journey, and a heartfelt thank you to those who had walked it with him. It was a final message of love, not just for his family, but for the millions of fans who had supported him, understood him, and loved him, even in his darkest moments. On the morning of July 22, 2025, the news broke. Ozzy Osbourne had passed away. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe, from Elton John calling him chaos and compassion in one soul, to Tony Iommi admitting that he felt a piece of my soul had gone with him. Fans gathered at the Rainbow Bar and Grill in Los Angeles and at the Black Sabbath bench in Birmingham, leaving flowers, vinyl records, and handwritten letters. It was a global outpouring of grief for the man who had given them so much. But his words, those final, quiet words, resonated deeper than any screaming anthem ever could. They spoke to a truth that few could understand. For Ozzy Osbourne, fame was not his legacy. Survival was. In that 2022 interview with People magazine, he had already told them how he wanted to be remembered. Survival is my legacy, he said. I'm 73. Why should I throw the towel in? People still want to buy my records. People still want to see me. So why should I? It motivates me to get off my backside and do something. Decades of drug and alcohol abuse, public meltdowns, and chronic health struggles had nearly ended his life countless times. Yet every time the world counted him out, he came back. A little slower, a little more fragile, but still here. His final words weren't a reflection on the fame, the money, or the mayhem. They were a testament to the journey itself, a humble, sincere thank you to everyone who had been a part of it. In the end, the Prince of Darkness didn't vanish. He didn't fade. He left with a final message that was both utterly human and profoundly legendary. He left the world with a final lesson, that in a life filled with chaos, the greatest victory isn't perfection, but simply survival. Did it change your perception of the legend? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this journey into the quiet twilight of a rock icon moved you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to our channel for more untold stories from the shadows of fame. Thank you for watching.